Hello. Good evening. I tend to find out that this thing is a bit too formal. And so to relax myself, I would like to tell you a little story about me and a chicken. So when I was a little boy, my grandmother gifted me a chicken. Please don't ask me why a chicken. She thought it was actually a good idea. I must have been four, maybe five at that time, right? And I'm a traditional Asante. And so my grandmother comes from a very deep part of Asante Achimagogo. And so we used to go visit every single school holiday as it were. And with this particular instance, my grandmother gifted me a chicken. I'm not sure why a chicken, but again, I took the chicken. And I took the chicken and I put a little rope around one of the chicken's leg and then I tied it to a little fence next to my grandmother's door. And every so often, I go and check on the chicken, etc., etc. And so before the end of this particular school holiday, my grandmother told me that I could now untie my chicken, right? And the family would enjoy the feast of what happens when you untie a chicken. And so I did. I went on to untie it. But after you've untied it, you would think that the chicken would run, right? And it didn't. And I tried to shoot it some more and some more, and the chicken didn't run. Because I personally, I didn't want the family to enjoy the feast, you see. I didn't want them to enjoy the chicken. And so as I said, I tried very hard to shoot the chicken away, but then she didn't move. My theory is this is exactly where Africa and then African entrepreneurs we are today. You and I, we are that chicken. And over the past 400 years, we've had systems that have tied us into our leg and told us what we can and cannot do, that which we are and are not capable of. It has given us quality of education to our parents that has turned them to nothing more than mere mortals, in truth, living marginally better than slave laborers. It has given us an economic system that has exploited our people and our resources. And so after independence, whether you talk about the great nation of South Africa or where we are in Ghana about 60 plus years ago, it is said to us, right, dear chicken, you are free, run. And so the big question is, how can we, when we don't have a history of economic liberation, how do we do it? When most of us, our parents and our families, certainly in mind, have a particular history to understand how to create economic system. How do you then turn around and say to young people, do the business? Who do they model? What do they learn? From whence does this knowledge come? One of my mentors, his name is Vusitemwa, he said, you had an introduction that he was privileged to be invited on a panel for Dragons Den. Now on TV is the other program. He was asked to be on that too. Yeah, he was asked to be on that too. And then he told the producers was he can only be one mythical creature at a time. And that, let me tell you the part of the truth that you are not seeing. You see, people watch platforms like Dragons Den and see investors say yes or no. I parted about 4,000 Ghana cedis around my own business during the season. I lost all of them. That is the part nobody tells you. It is very nice to talk about funding and then venture capitals, but what nobody tells you is that real money that real people work for, that is intended to build yours and my continent. And so who do we blame? Do we blame the archaic system of economic enterprise? One of my mentors, as I said, his name is Vusi Temewa. He said he studied finance, by the way. His background was investment banking. He specialized in leverage. His job was to walk into offices of CEOs of companies that didn't need leverage, convince them to buy companies they shouldn't buy, leverage balance sheet they shouldn't be doing, raise cash they wouldn't be able to apply on levels of credit they will never be able to afford. 5 years later, unable to pay back the money, then re-leverage their balance sheet. Today, that thing has a very nice word called private equity. My argument, and I might step on some toes by saying this, but I believe that Africa does not need more private equities. We don't need more specialized leverage finance houses. That's not what we need. We forget that private equity was a construct of the United States, much later Europe, only as late as the 1940s. After they had 600 years of building economic enterprise, they introduced the instrument of private equity capital. And yet here we are, barely a century here, and we think it will help us build high growth businesses. Now, it's not the instrument that is the problem. It is how it's been applied here. And so I want to take you on a fictional journey because I believe that it might help us better understand what is at the heart of the issue. Go back with me to the beginning of time, to the very beginning of time. And in a small cave somewhere sent in western part of Africa, you find two men. Ladies, excuse me for maybe patriarchal. Two men sitting around doing what men do when they have free time. You know the answer? Nothing. And one man called Kojo speaks with the other friend, Safo. He says, Safunya, Charlie, what's up? He said, I do. He said, what are we going to do with our free time now that our wives has let us off for the afternoon? He said, I know nothing. Back then, the version that you and I would have had of watching a FIFA or F1 race or PlayStation were two men sitting around playing with rocks. And so they did. They played around with some rocks and some sticks, and by chance, the rocks happens to knock against each other. Now, what happens when rocks knock against each other? They spark, right? So the friend was clever. He said, do that again, and he did it again. And then the friend went outside. He collected a wee bit of dry grasses. He put it all together in a mound with some sticks on it, and he consistently knocks the rocks against each other until he discovers what you and I call it today fire. Fire.